Hello and welcome to the Bulletin with UBS on Monocle Radio. Each week, the sharpest minds and freshest thinkers in finance take you beyond the numbers and hype, right to the heart of the big issues of the day. Today, we're enjoying the first in a short series of specials looking back at the 2025 UBS European Conference. In these shows, we'll be picking out a few of the key panels, themes and talking points to explore in greater depth. And we're kicking off this week with that deeper dive into data as a differentiator. To unpack that for us, we're fortunate to have three leading voices from across UBS. Raj Hindocha, the Global Research COO at UBS, who's the person responsible for two of the bank's key proprietary data assets, plus key figures from those very units. Michel Lerner, here in London, who heads up UBS Holt, the framework for comparing and valuing companies worldwide. And from New York, Rob Donnenfeld, head of product at UBS Evidence Lab, the largest sell-side alternative data offering of its kind. They are all going to tell us some of what was up for discussion at the European Conference this week and about the development of a combined resource constructed from those individual subsets into UBS Data Intelligence Collective, a truly unique group of assets. Raj, Michel, Rob, welcome to the show to you all. Terrific, and we're very grateful that you've joined us this week right amidst the European Conference. Let's talk a little bit about data as a differentiator and why the time is now, why this is such a focus and why we're looking at it in earnest. And Raj, maybe you can jump in and set the scene a little bit for us here. I'm sure intuitively people will know why a command of data is so important, but tell us a little bit about what's maybe a little bit different in the discourse and the narrative around this theme just at the moment.
So I think at the moment, with written content becoming increasingly commoditized over time with the advent of AI and solutions that our clients will have at their fingertips, anything that's unique or differentiated will really stand out. And for us at UBS, the long-standing focus on data has become increasingly important. This content will be something that distinguishes us from our competition, will allow our analysts and ourselves to provide our clients with information or perspectives that they cannot get elsewhere. And we're seeing this in our conversations with clients where they're asking more and more about our unique data sets. We're also seeing this in their votes as well, with more and more clients having data as a discrete component in their broker vote, which was something that wasn't the case 10 years ago.
Well, that's really interesting. And tell me a little bit about, I guess, the challenge and the opportunity, Raj, inherent then in drawing together a number of these different complementary assets. And I suppose some of them are kind of proprietary in nature, of course, which makes their value all the greater. Is that one of the key dynamics, balancing how you draw all of these strands together in order to identify where the areas are that you can best generate value in every sense of the word?
I think you touch upon something there, like the drawing together is something that's definitely a focus of ours right now and the go forward. It's probably interesting and useful just to go back to how UBS has evolved in the data space over the last decade or so. So Evidence Lab was founded in 2013 with the first data sets dating back to 2014. The initial focus here was to support fundamental analysts and to test their hypotheses, using surveys, scraping pricing data, to help an analyst publish a research report and publish a view or an emerging view. Around 5 years ago, in direct response to client demand and the emergence of data teams, discrete dedicated data teams within these clients, we decided to provide these data sets direct to clients. At the same time, our quant research offering evolved away from just pure written research and analytics offerings to leveraging our broader research analyst platform to generate signals that we could deliver direct to clients to support their investment process. And then Holt was something that we had at UBS looked at with envy from another firm, and was really fortuitous for us that as part of our integration with Credit Suisse, we were able to add a Holt to our portfolio, despite the numerous attempts across the sell side to try and create their own versions of Holt. I think it's proven a challenge that no one could actually meet. And what I've come to appreciate now with Holt as part of our organization is just how complex and advanced the modeling is, and to better understand why there's no true competitor in the marketplace. So to answer your question about stitching things together, we're now, as of the Holt integration sort of last year, in a position where we can cross-fertilize alternative data into Holt or link Holt with our quant research teams and really bring all of this offering together. So that's very much our focus now and on the go-forward basis.
Yeah, and that must be why it's such an exciting moment at events like the European Conference, of course, to get together and explore what can happen and really interrogate what can happen when you can draw on all of these incredible resources. You've mentioned Evidence Lab, and we'll talk to Rob in a second about that. But Michel, just on Holt, as Raj has explained, they're obviously sort of inherited from Credit Suisse following the integration. Just give us a little bit of a sense from your perspective. Look at those data sets. We're not talking about 10, 15 years, 70 years. Tell us a bit about exactly what it can do and what the sorts of resources that you have access to as part of UBS Holt.
Sure. I guess, look, we're clearly the new kid on the block in the UBS data offering, but Holt's actually been in business for over 40 years. And what we've been doing is we're effectively a leading global provider of systematic corporate performance and valuation data. So we have a data set that systematically removes the accounting distortions you see in company financial accounts to give users a stronger, better understanding of the true quality, the valuation of stocks. And we do that centered around our proprietary measures of performance, CFROI, or cash flow return on investment. The key value added is twofold. One, it's the standardized, cleaned up financial data sets that we have. Over a long history, as you alluded to, 70 years of history in the case of the US. Non-US, we've got coverage that starts in the mid-1980s. The second element is the breadth of the coverage as well. We're doing that for over 20,000 stocks globally. Which effectively means that we're covering 99% of the global market cap. It is a true value add when you're a global investor with a large universe. If you are an emerging market investor, a small cap investor, just to give you a sense, in China alone, I think we have over 2,500 stocks under coverage, which effectively makes us the biggest provider of financial information on that market among all the sell-side providers. So it's the depth of the offering, but also the breadth of it that really stands out. So for users, what it means, it's the ability to look at patterns through the life cycle of the business, compare them through time across other businesses that might be similar in the dynamic that we would have seen from a profitability and growth perspective, but also at a sector or regional level to identify how stocks behave across different macro regimes.
Yeah, well, I want to drill down into what some of those narratives emerging from all that data is in just a moment. But Rob, if I just bounce to you quickly, just on the UBS Evidence Lab, we're lucky on this program. We've been making it for, I don't know, over 10 years now, and we've had the opportunity to dip into Evidence Lab research on a number of occasions. And so our listeners will be familiar with how compelling the learnings are. But again, a step back, talk about the nuts and bolts. Evidence Lab, again, one of, or maybe the largest sell-side data offering of its kind, a huge library of assets. And obviously there are lots of partnerships that are constantly struck up across all research departments to help answer these big questions, which might affect any industry in the spotlight. Tell us a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts of how Evidence Lab works.
So Evidence Lab is an alternative data provider that exists as part of the equity research department, working closely with equity research analysts and also making our data sets available to external clients. We have more than 300 data sets that cover every industry in every region. And basically, we collect our data using three main ways. One, and the primary way, is we build web mining robots, and we manage around 2,000 web scrapers that collect anything from prices to locations. We also partner with 60 plus different unique data providers, some that are kind of commonplace across the buy side and sell side, and others where we have proprietary relationships. And then lastly, we do surveys, and we conduct more than 100 plus surveys, business surveys, consumer surveys, and whatnot, asking questions and answering analyst questions.
Yeah, super interesting. So what does all this hard work reveal? And maybe, Raj, I'll just come back to you first of all. We talked about that challenge and opportunity of drawing these strands together. What's most exciting? I guess once you kind of get towards the end of that process, and you can be as specific or as generalized as you like, how do you go about then extrapolating the things that are going to set the agenda for the narratives, the stories, the opportunities you want to highlight?
Yeah, so as you've heard, these products that we have at UBS, some were developed in-house, some were acquired, some have been developed in research, and we have other offerings that have been developed in our global markets division. What we've formed this year is a collective group called UBS Data Intelligence, which incorporates Evidence Lab, Holt, Quant Research, our research feeds, and businesses from Global Markets, Data Solutions, and Delta. And what this means today is that we have what we believe is a truly unique collection of assets with strong use cases across the quant investor universe, the fundamental, both long onlys, quants, and hedge funds. For short horizon and long horizon investors, we have data that covers everything from macro to companies, both publicly listed and private. And what we're trying to do with the data intelligence offering is to bring all of these assets together and deliver the best of UBS to our clients in one place. So that means whether it's your experience from a technology interface in ingesting this data, any troubleshooting that's required from a sales perspective, we're trying to bring all of these components of the offering together so that from a client, they can really have a one-stop shop for all of these data needs that we can offer to them from UBS. So that for me is the really exciting thing. And as Rob and Michel talked about, some of what we're trying to do is how we can enrich these individual data sets from one another. And I think there's much more we can do to further increase our moat versus our competition.
Yeah, well, let's explore a little bit about what all this exciting data is telling us. Michel, I'll bounce over to you. And I don't know, maybe we zero in on some of your most popular and arresting recent work. I know you were looking at, are we in an AI bubble, which is a really, really kind of hot topic at the moment. That's maybe one example. But tell us some of the things that the data is revealing at the moment.
Yeah, look, the way we like to tell clients is ultimately we help them ask the questions and calibrate what the risk rewards are. So it's important to say that the data doesn't give you an answer per se, but it gives you reference points relative to history, relative to peers, to get a sense as to where things may be overextended from a valuation standpoint, where they may not be, and so where the risks and opportunities are. As you alluded to, AI beyond what we've done, it's obviously been the topical theme du jour. There's barely a day that goes by without someone referencing an AI bubble. So for us, it was actually quite interesting to say, okay, well, let's take a look at this and let's see how stocks behave in past bubbles. And the obvious comparable ends up being the internet run-up. And here, of course, the dynamics are somewhat different. The companies you're dealing with today are highly profitable businesses. The Magnificent Seven are creating value to the tune of levels we've never seen before. Just to throw a stat out there, I think 4 out of every $10 of value created in the U.S. market comes from just the Mag 7. So that's quite different from the dot-com era, where you had a lot of businesses that had .com in the end of their names, but ultimately still had very unproven business models. Having said that, when we look at valuations as well as the willingness the market has to reward stocks that have a narrative, it does have some echoes to the 1998-2000 period. More specifically, what do we see? The valuation of tech today on a price-to-book basis is gone right past .com levels. And here you might argue, well, that's justified. They've got higher earnings. But even on an earnings basis, your tech sector is trading its most expensive since 2004. Beyond that, what we're seeing is a market that's increasingly rewarding narratives, regardless of fundamentals, be it the quality of the business, the profitability of the business, or its valuation. And here, again, it's very similar to what we saw in 98-2000. The excess returns that you get from buying stocks that have a good narrative, in other words, names that have strong earnings revisions that are rewarded by strong share price performance, is exactly the same as what we saw at that point in time. So things are looking stretched from a valuation standpoint. The propensity for investors to reward these narratives at all costs is something that is certainly something to potentially be concerned about.
Yeah, well, Rob, let me bring you in here again then, because I wanted to ask about what are clients focused on when they come to you and seek your access to all of these resources, and then for you, as you said, to sort of frame those things in a way that has real utility? Are they talking about overvalued equities in this space? What are other things that are dominating the sort of the client agenda when they come to pick your brain?
So I think clients care about KPIs that impact the key debates in the market. So I think back to kind of, let's say, COVID, where Evidence Lab was tracking traffic congestion and footfall and things like that, because that was the key debate. You go then to tariffs, for example, and it's the movement of ships and tracking maritime trade, which is the most important thing and where investors are trying to get the most timely data. And then it's things like AI, as an example, which Michel was talking about, where Evidence Lab can provide data on the pricing of GPUs to help answer questions related to kind of bubbles and the potential there, or even kind of track the mentions of AI in different earnings calls and see how that varies by industry sector or even geography.
Yeah, and Raj, if I can go back to you, how difficult is, well, I guess it's a funny question, how hard's your job? Because I know some of the sort of popular data sets are things like, monitors of political probabilities, for example. And we always talk on this show and generally about how volatile and unpredictable some of these areas can be. How hard is it sometimes? Because, data isn't everything. And as we've heard already very eloquently, data is just one side. You've then got to draw out the correct conclusions. How hard's your job from day to day?
I think you touched on something there with Evidence Lab in particular. Unlike with financial data, we're often dealing with evolving data provider landscape, evolving constraints that they may have. So building a commercial model on a supplier base that can often be, often is evolving their strategy can be quite challenging. Ultimately, I think what we can deliver to our clients at UBS across all of these data assets is a view on the corporate ecosystem. So whether it's an in-depth supply chain mapping that our quant research team has built with our analysts that can provide you, if company X, if there's a hurricane in region A, how does a company 4 levels down across the supply chain get impacted by that? So from something like that to providing an overlay of the Holt view on a company, to providing an Evidence Lab data set on some sort of pricing dynamics, or as Rob mentioned, how tariffs or shipping traffic is being impacted. Our job is ultimately to try and stitch together everything we know to help our clients make as informed a decision as possible. So I guess, you could say it's hard, but you could also say it's incredibly challenging and interesting and exciting, because we are trying to stitch together everything that we know and constantly brainstorming new ideas of how we can get a read on the markets that there is just not possible to get just from consuming pure financial data on its own.
Well, obviously, the sort of the prism through which we're looking at this is some of the narratives that have been up for discussion at the European Conference, which is something we're going to be coming back to over the next few weeks here on the programme. And just tell me about data and data intelligence at the conference. What was on the agenda and how did you structure things? I don't know who best to ask. Maybe Michel, I'll ask you about that. I know you and your colleagues were talking a lot about tracking changes in Europe in particular, but tell us a little bit about some of the ways that actually the conference hosted this area and how you put UBS's data intelligence into sharp focus.
Yeah, look, we had, there's a massive focus on data, as you've heard, across the firm. And so I think data was very well represented on the day. It started with a number of booths that we had under the data intelligence umbrella, each of us available to answer questions, showcase the offering to clients. And a lot of footfall, as one would expect, a lot of interest, just given the importance of data in the investment process of a lot of clients. We also had a panel which featured both Evidence Lab and Holt within the context of European equities to try and make sense as to, is Europe investable? Is it a false dawn, as we saw at the beginning of the year? What can actually get investors excited about the region after such a prolonged period of underperformance relative to the US?
Yeah, and Rob, maybe a word from you too. I wonder how much these kinds of events like the big European conference give you food for thought and help you look at, what's the next data set that's going to become indispensable. It must throw up these kinds of conversations, meeting people face to face must throw up a lot of opportunity to think about the next jump forwards in terms of how you can innovate.
Yeah, I think I always look forward to these conferences, and I guess this conference was no different. Being able to have all of these investors in the room, being able to kind of show them the newest and greatest coming from Evidence Lab, but also give a peek in terms of what the future pipeline is to see what ideas resonate, what debates are worth tracking. I think another area as well that we do a lot with the conference is expanding our distribution and kind of focusing on which data sets should we be delivering programmatically via things like API, Snowflake, and Axway. And the feedback and kind of direct interaction with the clients is invaluable there.
And Raj, maybe just a final thought from you. I know that as a kind of one of the guys that's running this whole kind of amazingly complex and yet at the same time beautifully, elegantly simple global research system. What's the potential here? How much better can these processes get? You've talked already about innovation and then refinement, and whether that's the kind of the human conclusions that are drawn from all of these materials. What are your aspirations? Give us a kind of a medium-term view about, I don't know, where all of this can take us and the potential that remains still untapped at the moment.
I think that, UBS, we see this in our client votes. We see this in the feedback. We have built a leading position in the data space, and we're very fortunate that we are where we are. But we also see the demand for clients and the nature of how they vote is also based on continuous improvement and evolution in the offering. We also see more and more of our competitors competing and adding resources in this space. So not just the opportunity, the imperative for us is to continue to move faster and work harder than our competition to preserve our competitive edge in the data space. And I think by having the pedigree of assets such as Holt and Evidence Lab, the depth of the work that our quant research team has done across our analyst community, we really need to bring all of these assets together to leverage things that we have that are proprietary and the broad scale that we have that very few other sell-side firms can compete with. And I think that's really the opportunity. I think it's to continue to stay ahead, to continue to invest, and continue to set the bar to ensure we remain top of mind for our clients. And I think that their ability to consume not just written content, but data in particular, is going to grow exponentially, and therefore their demands for this type of content will increase. So there's a real opportunity there for us to really own that space.
That was Raj Hindocha, Global Research COO at UBS, and before that, Michel Lerner, who heads up UBS Holt, and Rob Donnenfeld, Head of Product at UBS Evidence Lab. And that brings us to the end of this edition here on Monocle Radio. Listen again and explore more at monocle.com, or follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Keep an eye and an ear out for future editions of the show, looking back at the European Conference. Also, highly recommended, find out how UBS can leverage all of this expertise to help you by heading to ubs.com. While you're there, search Evidence Lab for more on the largest sell-side alt data offering of its kind, or search UBS Holt if you want to read more about that framework for comparing and valuing companies around the world. This is The Bulletin with UBS on Monocle Radio. I'm Tom Edwards. Thanks for listening.